I have a confession.
Tell me.
So I accidentally trained my dog to demand a treat every time we come back from a walk. So 5 times a day, she literally runs up the stairs into the apartment, jumps on her bed and is like, I'm ready, give me my treat. And I thought about stopping it, but then I'm like, she's only here for a short time. Gotta live your life.
It's true. And so you give her treats on your bed?
No, her bed.
Okay,
Not
good.
my bed. No,
right.
she runs to her bed and then she sits there and she waits. And sometimes when I'm feeling like extra generous, I give her a dental treat and she loses her little mind. And it's so great. It's so great. And so my dog owns me. That is my confession.
I think all of our pets own us. Guys, if you believe that your pet owns you, please leave a comment.
If you are also owned by a 4-legged sentient being, let us know.
All right. Hello, I'm Sybil Solon. I'm an esthetician and spa owner.
And hi, I'm Alex Ellis. I'm a body nerd and wellness expert, and we are business besties.
And bosses. Running your own business, it's hard.
But we're terrible terrible employees, so we're figuring it out.
I've already figured it out, but we promise to show you everything that we know about how to make 6-figure income and beyond.
And be brutally honest about what works and what totally sucks.
Oh my God. So much of this totally sucks. I'll be honest. Let's get started. What's going on today is we are talking about so many things, and Alex is going to let us know because I'm so excited about this. I can almost not even wait for her to start recording.
I know. You're like, okay, let's go. I was like, I didn't hit start yet. I didn't hit start, but here we are. We have started. So on today's show, we were talking about how to deal with clients' unrealistic expectations when it comes to beauty. And really why Facetune has made all of us body dysmorphic. Even if you're like, what's Facetune? Trust me, it's impacting you. And no matter how much we're told true beauty comes from within, we all know that it's not freaking true, because out there in the world, beauty freaking matters. Yeah.
It's a commodity.
So 2 things kind of spurred our conversation today. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about celebrity like interactions that they had. And one of the hosts mentioned running into Angelina Jolie at like a CVS where she like walked around an aisle and like literally physically, or I think it was a Barnes & Noble, something like that. Something super like, normal people go there. Like she physically ran into her and was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And she was like, yeah, she's just like so pretty. She's like one of those faces that like is so pretty, like too pretty to be with like the rest of us.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, that is so fascinating. And also, if you are watching The Voice, which I've never watched before, but now I'm watching because it's really fun to puzzle and listen to The Voice. Gwen Stefani, I love her. She has had a lot of work done. This is not to shame anyone, but it starts you thinking about these unrealistic expectations we have of how our body should look and how our faces should look. And we will link to the greatest YouTube channel of all time with Lorry Hill, all about plastic surgery. And she goes in depth. She is not a plastic surgeon. She is a fan of plastic surgery. And she breaks down all of the celebrities and like, here's a picture from early in their career to now. And you can see they had a nose job probably at this time. And then they had an eye lift at this time. And the one thing that I have realized literally in like the last 8 months is that all of our ideas and conceptions of what beauty is have been manufactured for us, whether it is physically through surgery and having, work done, or through apps like Facetune. Like if you think that a single picture from the Kardashians is the real thing, you would be wrong. They're all fake.
And they've had so much work done, so much work done. They don't even look like the people that they started at. They don't look human anymore.
Lorry Hill has 3 videos for Kim Kardashian. One of her face, it's a half hour long. One of her body, that's another half hour long. Yeah. And I think the next one's going to be on her skin.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that this is really important because like Lorry Hill is amazing. What she does, she's out there doing what I consider like God's work, because her explanation on what is happening is so important, because I know that I sent it to Alex at one point in time because I was like, this is how I can tell what's going on. Like I literally can look at things, look at people and be like, oh, they had this and this didn't. And she's like, how can you tell? I'm like, because if you've worked in this long enough, you work in the industry long enough, you get good at just knowing. And I mean, I know that as an esthetician, you might have clients who are like, I've not had anything done. And you're like, oh, girlfriend.
You're like, I can see your eyelids and your hairline.
I can feel what's happening in your face. I can see what's happening. Don't lie to me. It's not helping. We all know what's happened. I don't care how good the surgeon is. Work has been done.
Yeah. Well, and also I just want to add too, from like a body nerd perspective, again, not to shame, if you want to have plastic surgery and it makes you awesome, like by all means, go ahead and do it. But also understand that there is scarring that happens to the fascia that'll forever change like how your skin and body move together. And I don't think that people really consider how that's also going to impact like, muscle structure and how things work. So it's like, yeah, you know what's happened because like you can see it with your eyes.
Well, and the same thing happens to the face. I mean, one of the things that I talk to my clients about is people who get injectables in their lip. Long term, I have discovered that starts to break apart those fascial structures. And if you don't continue to get that injectable, that lip line starts to droop and sag, and people start having problems with it long term. So there are all kinds of stuff long term that we could talk about. But what we're talking about is how people have these unrealistic expectations, perhaps, of what they should be looking like when they come in and they talk to you, and they want to be sold things, right? And they're like, I want to have skin like this, and so I'm going to have microneedling done, or I'm going to get, I'm going to do yoga for forever, and I know that I'm going to be so bendy that I'm going to be a contortionist. And you're like, that's not real.
Not sure what's going to happen. Well, even, I just did kind of like a case study testimonial interview with a client, and I am very intentional with how I ask the questions to get them to truthfully tell me, like their response, but also to guide the conversation in a way. And I feel like I'm flubbed up in that I said, and what's next for you? Like, what are your goals? What are you working towards over? And I said body goals. And then I was like, fuck, but it was already out. And then I also put a time limit in the next like 6 months or something. And I'm sure you guys have had that where like you say something, you're like, fuck, that is not what I meant. And I know what's going to come out of her mouth. And like, well, here we are.
Right.
And, she went to like, well, I really want to lose some weight, and which is fine. Like absolutely fine. Like I too have these thoughts all the time. And I'm like, well, let me like have cookie every other day instead of every day. But that cup you brought me yesterday was so good, like whatever. But for me, these body expectations, like I want to change my body. I want to change my body composition. And I come from it. And a lot that I've learned from you, Sybil, of like, okay, but what if you just celebrated how fucking cool your body is and all the awesome things you can do and how resilient it is and how moldable and changeable and transformable it is right now as it is, and not be worried about changing things down the line. I don't know where it's going, but it happens no matter what. Whatever, we're in this beauty industry where everyone is being fed this bullshit lie that we need to look a certain way, that clothes don't fit because you haven't met these standards and you don't look the certain way. And it doesn't work that way. So how do we navigate this as professionals in meeting our clients where they're at and helping them with the transformation they want, but coming at it not from a place of shame or blame or, personal responsibility on them, but shifting it more into celebration would be my guess, but still realistic,
Right. And it is a change in perspective, because understand that these are deep rooted ideas in people. These are so deep rooted. And so it comes out as judgment if you say things to them, where you're like, like what you're thinking is wrong, or like you shouldn't say that to yourself, So like when people come into me and they're talking about the fact that they're like, Sybil, I hate my eye wrinkles. Okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you should like your eye wrinkles. I'm never going to tell you that you like your eye wrinkles. You know what? I don't want you to have eye wrinkles. If you don't want them, I don't want you to have them, right? This is how this works. I want what you want, right? But at the same time, I'm going to be like, hey, the way you talk about yourself matters. And so that's what I'll say. Hey, just so you know, the way you talk about yourself matters. If you hate your eye wrinkles, I am going to work on your eye wrinkles. But at the same time, I think you're beautiful. And I think that you're at every step of the way, as we work on your eye wrinkles, that you're going to be beautiful. right? And so that is the way that I handle a lot of those situations, because you also have to understand that a lot of times people are like, I hate my eye wrinkles. But what they're saying is, I hate myself. And they're just using their eye wrinkles as a way to hate themselves.
Which,
right. And it's so hard when you start talking to people, because they'll be like, I hate my eye wrinkles. You're like, okay, I worked your eye wrinkles. Well, now I hate this thing. What they're saying is, I actually hate myself.
Well, because we live in a world where what?
That hates us, that's constantly trying to like tell us to hate ourselves so that we buy things.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm a part of it too. Like, marketing is about shame, because we can shame people into buying stuff. But also because we were talking about other, business marketers and stuff, and how, would you say, like Rush Limbaugh? I'll throw him under the bus. Like, he looks like shit. And Howard Stern is another one. Like, nobody was like, oh, cut your hair, Howard. And like, oh my God, your glasses are so ugly. And like, you need like
big, weird, gothy, like bird looking man. Clearly you shouldn't be working.
Right. And yet, as women, whether it is spoken or unspoken, there's this expectation that once, to be successful, you must look a certain way. And time again, you see people, as they start to rise in popularity and fame and notoriety, all of a sudden they're getting the blowouts all the time, and they have the lashes, and they say, oh, it's just for me. And it's like,
is it?
But is it? Yeah.
Right. Is it? Or did you fall into a standard that you're like, well, I need to look better because that way I'm respected.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to understand that, like you might have clients who come in and they have a new job, or they need to look in their mind, they need to look a certain way, because to look that way will make them feel that way. Like you're told all the time, look like the job you're going to have. Look like the person that you want to be. Okay. Well, I look like a hobo all the time, and I don't look like your regular esthetician. I tell people all the time, like, I didn't get jobs as esthetician all the time. Like, I got turned down for jobs all the time, in doctors' offices especially. And I'm one of the best estheticians in the country, as my clients are currently finding out as they're trying to replace me. And I'm getting all the emails. Sybil, I've been burned. Sybil, I don't know what to do. I can't find somebody to replace you. I know.
Like,
I'm one of the best estheticians in the country.
Oh my God.
Yeah, seriously. But the thing is, because I don't look like a regular esthetician, I'm not skinny. I'm not like essentially pretty like a boring, bland esthetician would be.
Like, right? No shade, but you don't wear clogs and a white coat.
Right. I don't. I wear very bold colors, and I don't wear a lot of makeup. I don't do any fillers. I don't do any of the things that you would see in a regular, like, doctor's office. Most people in a plastic surgeon's office, they are done and they work. They do all the things. I don't do anything. I don't do any of that stuff. I look like a boring Midwesterner. Like, I really do.
Well, if you were a boring Midwesterner, as someone whose roots are in the Midwest, you would be wearing blue jeans all the time.
Right. Well, and I hate blue jeans, but I'm like, I won't give up my yoga pants. I'm like, I need to be able to do dance at any moment.
I know, you never know when you might need to.
And if you're a person out there and you're an esthetician like me, and you're like, well, that's me. Yeah, it's okay. There are estheticians like us out there. We're hiding, but we're out there. We probably own our own business, and we didn't want to be told what to do and what to wear.
Wow. Okay. So I was journaling about this morning. I swear to God, it always happens. About, just like kind of thinking about, like, what would I say to, like, inner child work, like my 12-year-old self, like, what did she need to hear? And I think that one of the things I've done as I have grown older, and I think it's this inverse relationship, is as you age, you care less about what other people think. Yes. Right. And I was so afraid of, like, being nerdy and, like, being super into all the stuff that I'm into, and I didn't want anyone to know. And now I, like, let my freak flag fly, because, like, that's what brings me joy, and I just think it's the standards. All of us are miserable trying to meet these standards of what other people have set out for us. So if one of the things we can do for our clients is help them to find who they want to be, not who they feel they should be, like that's like God's work. I don't know how else to say it, but it
absolutely is
helping people find their purpose in a way that feeds their soul and brings them joy. And maybe it is through just, like, helping them with their eye wrinkles. Like I know I can say with 100% certainty, when I started working with you, I still remember that first fucking facial was so fucking awful because there was so much stuff in my face. But you have taught me how to, that the skin is a representation of what's happening in my body and the things that I can do to feed that, to give me skin that like I do feel confident going out in the world and just like, hey, what's up? Here I am. And if something happens, I also know what to do, And that didn't come from, well, you better cover it up. Like shame on you and shame, 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 shame. Nobody. I started with Ella, my dog. Dogs don't learn from shame either. And if you have a dog and you're yelling at them all the time, I promise you, like, get them chicken. They're going to listen to you so much better. It's like, it's all the same.
Reward. So when you have a client who comes in and they have these, so you have an intake, right? They come in and you're going to do an intake. And Alex, you do intakes as well, right? So you have these conversations and they're like, you ask them the question, what are your goals, or what are your goals right now? So Alex, what do you do? Would you ask them a goal? Like, what are your goals like right now? What are your goals for the future? How do you do it?
Yes. My favorite on the phone is to be like, okay, so if I were to call you a year from now and everything went exactly as you pictured it and everything was just like gravy and awesome, what would you say? Like, where would you be? Who would you be? What would you be doing? Like, what's going on?
That's a great one. So I have, so for me, I always say, I have goals for you. Like I always say, hey, I look at your skin and I see something, but I want to hear what you have to say. Like, what are your goals? And I'm like, you get to do 3 things. All right. So what are the 3 things that my magic wand is going to fix for you? Okay. Because like, you can't do everything. 3 things. What are the things? All right. And they're like, and then we're going to work on those things. And I straight up tell them in the beginning, I'm like, and understand that those things, they're going to change because quite frankly, every time we fix something, you're going to hate something else. And that's fine. That's how we know we're getting somewhere. Because it's 100% true. And I write down literally the exact phrases they tell me. I put down exactly the phrase they say. So when they tell it to me back, and I'm like, I'm putting this down exactly as you say, because when you say you don't care about it, I can read this back to you and remind you that you did one day. Right? You can be like, as long as my, brown spots are gone, I will be happy. And so a year from now, when they're like, yeah, I mean, my brown spots, whatever, but I really care about, and you're like, okay, so when you said that you'd be happy, are you happy?
You were lying to me.
And people are like, did I say that? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh my God.
I think it comes back to that external validation that we're all just trying to, prove ourselves to the world with something outside of us that we actually don't really have a lot of control over.
Right. And then pictures, guys. I know it's hard and my clients hate it too, but pictures are so very, very important because, and it shows all the time, if you're on forums and groups as well, people all the time come and be like, hey, I have a person that they're not happy in, but here's their before and after picture. And I'm like, did you show it to them? Because that's huge. And sometimes you really have to point out, because people do not have our eyeballs. This is why Lorry Hill literally has a whole entire YouTube channel, this is what's happening. Well, you have to point it out to people.
Yeah. So you were posting on your stories when you were doing face sculpting and you were like, see the difference? And I was like, can you point it out for me? And then you started pointing out, and even so, again, like lean into your expertise, like point it out for people, show them, like explain them. And also I think that there's like this, like, fine line between overwhelm of all of the things that you see and just focusing, like you started with, what are your 3 goals?
Right.
And so focusing and leading with what they want and what they were really working towards and how you see that reflected in their before and after.
Right.
And if you haven't taken before and after pictures, I mean, first of all, do that if you can. But maybe there is some other assessment, some other check-in that you can encourage people to do. So because I work with people remotely, and I also believe that there's, fundamentals of good movement. I have people focusing on squat, hip hinging, and overhead reach. So those become essentially our check-in things that along the way, as they're progressing, they can see, oh, well, now I can squat down to this place, or now I don't have pain when I reach my arms overhead. So whether it's an actual picture, again, sometimes people aren't comfortable with pictures or whatever. So maybe there's like 5 other points of skin texture and, some other thing that they can do for themselves that they're paying attention to.
Right. That's a great one. So maybe have like they write down words that meant something to them, or you have the words set up for them and they circle what they're feeling their skin is like. And then later you're like, okay, so what are your skin feeling like now? I mean, it's harder with skin sometimes because, it's also vague. Sometimes you're like, so like, you're like, what do you want? Creamy skin? Do you want glowing skin? What does that mean to you?
Right.
You're like, I would never want glowing skin. That means I'm shiny. And you're like, well, that would be shiny.
Which is different. Well, so I think for skin stuff, leaving it open-ended would be good. So allow them to, and we've talked about this before, allow them to tell you what they want. Right. And then with your expert brain on the back end, you're like, okay, so they're saying glowing. So what I really want to do is
Well, and also understand that I will literally ask them once again, I write down exactly what they say. And I'm like, and so when you say that you want glowing skin, what does that actually mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I literally try to get as much information. So they'll be like, well, it means that it's, pretty. And what it almost always comes down to is it means I can go out without makeup on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So just so you know, it almost always circles around to that.
I just want to say one more thing too. So that I want to go outside without makeup on, and helping them to see that that is possible is different from, God, don't you hate those wrinkles and want to get rid of them?
Yes.
Right. So when we talk about not leading with shame and shifting the perspective, part of how you do that is just changing where the conversation is going, right? Changing what we're talking about. And this is a shift that I've shared and how that made a big difference for me as well, right? I'm not focusing on like everything sucks and you have so much pain, but like, what about a perfect push-up? What about getting back to hiking? What about these things that you want to do that seem impossible right now because of where you're at? So something to also consider, and maybe you map this out on a piece of paper, is, who is my client when they walk in the door, and who is the perfect client? They don't need me anymore, but they stick around because they like me. Right. Mm-hmm. Or they just like, we have good conversation, whatever it might be. What are the characteristics of each of them, and what is it going to take to get from point A to point Z? And where you can speak of is not just a point A, because like they know what it's like to be at point A. They know like, fuck, I hate my skin. I have like, pimples all the time. Like I don't like the texture. It's dull. Like they already know that. We don't need to harp on that. But let me talk about one step down the line, or two steps down the line, or one step before it's exactly what you want it to be, because maybe that ideal feels too far off still. Right. So you can stair step them up to the goal skin that they want without ever having to blame or shame them for being where they are.
Absolutely. That's a great idea to think about. So keeping your client, so get them to be where they're happy with their skin, and change the perspective to they're talking about their joys instead of just their hatreds, changing their perspective. So a lot of times we're trying to keep more positivity in our treatment rooms. Right. So, and I do try to do that. And I hope that you will think about that as well, is when somebody says something negative about themselves, your job is to say something positive about them. And then I try to make them say something positive about themselves. Right. So that's another way to shift it. So if, Alex is like, I just feel that, that happens all the time. I just feel like my butt is too big today. We were just talking about butts, which apparently we both have giant butts.
We both have big booty derrieres.
Right. I just feel like my butt is too big today, and you're just like, it's because I've been eating all the chocolate and my butt is just too big. And you're just like, and I'm like,
do you know how much Kim Kardashian has paid and transferred fat around her body to have butts such as ours?
Right.
And I also said, like, I'm just so grateful to live in this time, as, overly manufactured as it is, that the big butt is in style, because I'm like showing off my butt as much as possible because we in style.
Right.
Also, apologies for the grinding. I'm just kidding.
Right. So you would totally, like, I would totally say something like, like, hey, people really love big butts. Or if people are like, if somebody's like, I really hate that I'm losing my hair right now, you're like, you know what? You still got some. That's really good. That's a place to start. Mm-hmm. You can totally work on that. And, I heard that you told me earlier that, you were having like, you got a new cat, or talk to me about whatever. Try to shift the conversation and perspective into something that's more positive to keep them on that train if you can.
I got a question for you. So I have this personality trait, we'll say, where I like to fix things, and I find it very hard to not suggest 8,000 things when someone tells me that they're like going through something. Like I'd be like, oh, but have you tried magnesium? It's like really helped me for my hair falling out. Right. So what's a way, like, that's not just like totally redirecting, but like, how can I have a conversation with somebody without?
Well, first, you're going to ask them if they want to hear that. Because I also I'm like, oh, I got lots of shit that can fix that. Right. So you want to ask them, because some people just want to complain. And that's, you have to understand, some people want to complain and they just want to be heard. They just want to be heard. And especially this happens in a treatment room. And it probably happens when they're sitting around working out. Like people just want to be heard. I just want to be heard. Yes, with the grinding. So
want to be my neighbor, because there's going to be an open apartment.
So usually, let's say somebody's like, I'm losing my hair and it's really making me angry and I just don't know what to do. And I'll be like, well, you still got some hair and there's things you can do about that. If you decide you want some suggestions, let me know. And then I leave a pause and I let them wait, and they're like, I would. What would you suggest? I'm like, okay, well, we got some easy things, which are some supplementation. Is that something that you're willing to do? Would you be interested in supplementation? If it was would that something you would do? Because like I recommend masks all the time for people's faces, and they don't want to do them. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're not going to do a mask, I'm not going to talk to you about it.
I know. That's, again, case study right here.
But don't waste your time recommending things that people are not going to do.
No.
So if they're like, I'm not really good at taking pills, I'm like, okay, well, then you know what? That's not going to be for you. If you decide that your hair loss gets bad enough and you want to take pills because that'll really help, come back to me and chat with me. But there are other things you can do. I'm sure you can search online and find them. Or you can ask them what they've done. Well, what have you tried?
Yeah.
And if they're like, well, really nothing. And you're like, okay, well, you don't really care. No, don't ever say that.
Don't say that. And then laugh. Don't do that.
You're like, oh, okay, well, is it because you're not really sure? I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can do, but definitely ask their opinion and what if they're looking for something. And if they're just like, I don't know. I'm just like, I feel really bad about it. You're like, okay.
Yeah, well, it's like asking for permission before offering feedback, which I think is a lost element of our society currently, to the point where you almost have to post stuff and say, hi, not looking for feedback. Don't offer it. I don't want it.
Not your business.
No. Not your business at all.
Not your business.
So how do we navigate an industry that really gets off on making us feel unworthy, ugly, not good enough, and help people find their joy in that, I guess?
Yeah. So I think that first of all, we have to realize, I think acknowledging the fact that especially in the beauty industry, that we work in an industry that is designed to make you feel ugly. Okay. And I think all the beauty industry, I think any industry, but especially the beauty industry. And then making the decision that you are not going to feed into that. Okay. So you're never going to be like, hey, this is, I'm going to sell this to you because of a problem that you have. You're selling something to somebody because you have a solution to a problem that they want to solve. You're not going to recommend something because they have a problem that they've never mentioned. All right. So Alex has eye wrinkles. I don't talk about her eye wrinkles because she doesn't fucking care about them. She doesn't care about them. I talk about her. I talk about the things she cares about. That's on her face.
Yeah. This one right here, you guys.
Yeah. Right.
Back to my supplements. I go.
Eye wrinkles is when we talk about things that like I want to work on. That when I want to practice, I'm like, Alex, you've got such good eye wrinkles. Can I practice on those?
No, it's just fine, paper thin skin.
I know, but we're working on that. So don't ever recommend something, that they don't want to do.
I just think my poor husband one time, I still remember because he reminds me of this all the time. He had this huge zit. I was like, I have something for that, right? do that. Don't do that. We're still talking about it. I think that was like 7 years ago.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. Nothing will like destroy somebody's soul more than that. When you're like, I can take care of whatever that is. And they're like, what? And you're like, your face.
Yeah. My bad. I'm learning how to be a compassionate person. Okay. It's just
right. By the way, as every waxer out there knows, do recommend eyebrow waxing and lip waxing if they need it, because you're just helping them. You are helping them. This is where it's completely different, because waxers were mean. So it's very different. We put our mean hats on. It's very different. We're helping them because people are making fun of them. We need to help them.
You're like, okay. I'm just gonna do this for you right now.
Yeah, no, because we need to help them. So the other thing that we're gonna make sure we kind of do is we're gonna help them by making sure that the words that they use are as positive as possible. And I like to actually point out when they're using negative terms about themselves.
Yep.
I point it out, and it is hard. Like, I don't tell them to stop, but I point it out. I'm like, you're speaking very negatively about yourself. Is everything okay? You know?
Yeah.
So because people will speak negatively about themselves and they won't realize it.
Yeah. It's so just like a pattern that or subconscious. You just, yeah.
Right. And I know this because people have told me before that they're like, Sybil, that's like, you speak very negatively about this about yourself. And I'm like, whew, I did not realize that. Thank you for pointing that out to me, because I can be a very negative person and I try really hard to change that dynamic in the language in which I speak. The words we say are freaking important.
They matter. It's like that plant experiment where they said like good stuff to one plant and bad stuff to the other.
Right. Or the water. So the Japanese guy who speaks to the water, and the mean water is all ugly and gross, and the nice water is all beautiful and shiny.
It's just crazy. I mean, it matters. It's like whether it's the words or it's the energy behind the words, like it all super matters. And I think that if we can start with ourselves, I think that's also a huge thing, is like start with yourself and model the behavior that you want to help encourage others to do as well.
Right.
And also, I'm just going to say, making sure that, if you do have the thought of just like, man, I wish I, didn't have as much softness or whatever in my body, that then you don't pile on the shame for yourself. Well, you shouldn't be thinking that. Like, it's just like this shame spiral that you can get
self-perpetuating. Also, if you try to come from a place of health and I especially find this with weight, and I'm a healthy at every size person. Okay. And I noticed that with people, they'll be like, well, I'm trying to eat healthier. But then it's still about diets.
Yeah.
Okay. So like
always
I do Whole30s all the time with clients to work on their skin. And I'm just trying to get rid of garbage out of their diet to try to figure out what's breaking them out. Right. And but people are like, they're like, okay, but will I lose weight? I'm like, that's not what this is about. That's not what this is about at all. So, and I'm really clear with clientele about it. I'm like, listen, and I can say this. I'm like, every time you talk about this, I'm like, you're making me feel fat. Are you fat shaming me?
Oh,
and I can do that because I am not a thin woman. And they'll be like, no, God, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I need you to think about the terms that you're using, because when you speak about yourself and you speak about things like this is how you make every person feel.
Yeah.
So you need to think about for yourself how you can also use the things around you to kind of hold up mirrors to people.
Yeah, I use a lot of stories too, of just like, because for the most part, like I attract clients who are very similar. And so when they'll say something like, I'm doing this, and I'm like, hi, so I really see that story of I'm not enough coming up. And here's where it came up for me this week too, because it's, I think, good. Yeah, we're all in this together of feeling like we're not good enough, we're not this enough, we're not that enough. And that, like, just acknowledging it so that we can move forward and through it together.
Right. And it's fine to tell people that you feel these things, because we all do. We all battle them. It's a constant battle because it's always coming. We're like Chinese walls that people are constantly coming at, right? So I constantly am telling Alex that she's got amazing arms. You know why? Which, by the way, she does. Her arms are freaking amazing. If you're not watching, they're amazing. You know why? Because her arms don't fit into freaking clothes. And her husband one time shamed her about it.
Yeah, he did.
He totally did.
And now I'm like, watch my push-ups, bitch.
Right? I'm like, and she's got amazing arms. And why don't we make clothes that fit her arms? Because we're stupid.
Yeah, and this is why I wear cutoffs all the time. Because Even one of my favorite shirts, the sleeves don't fit anymore. And I'm like, well, so this is the way it is now.
I'm like, yet her arms are magical. But you know what? The Rock would have the same problem.
I know. Well, actually, that I have been looking at The Rock's clothing because he has a whole workout line. I don't know where it is yet, but
yeah, no, we should definitely contact Dwayne and ask. So we have all kinds of other things with like filters, and we have, so one of the things I was talking about earlier is that with the people are constantly seeing all of like the filters, and they're looking on their Instagram, they take these photos and they look at themselves and like, this is how I'm supposed to look. This is not how you're supposed to look. You're supposed to look like the way you're supposed to look, which is like how you are.
Yeah.
Right. And so people come in and they're like, I want to look like this other thing. Okay. And understand that even your iPhone has a filter on it. Just the regular camera has a filter on it. So when you're like, I took a photo and you're like, I look so good. How do I look this good? Because I don't look in the mirror and even look this good right now. Because you have like a filter. It's just natural on there now. Because they realize everyone just wants to look good in their pictures. Mm-hmm. Right. So when people come in and like, I want to be poreless. I want to have a tiny waist. I want to be thinner looking. I want to look like the super cheekbone with eyelashes that I'm getting. Right. you're gonna have to explain to them that that's not per se reality, and you can explain to them how they can get there with what services either you offer or somebody else offers. But then you also need to make sure that you explain that that is also not real.
Yeah. That was one of the things Lorry Hill did. She did, it was, I think on the Khloe Kardashian video where Khloe like had posted this photo of like, oh, here's my new face or whatever. I mean, she didn't say that, but Lorry was like, okay, so this stuff literally isn't possible because she has completely restructured the bone structure of her
jaw was in a completely different place. They would have had to broken her jaw and take a piece out of it.
Yeah. And like that didn't happen. It just... we have to realize like everything you see isn't real, which is why when you look in the mirror, it's so hard to be like, I like what I see, like it is. Right. So, I'm looking at this book right here, and I was talking about it with someone else this morning as well. The celebrations for all the little it feels like dumb stuff, but it matters because it truly is helping to rewire our brain towards positivity and getting the same dopamine hits that your brain is currently addicted to towards the negative stuff. So one way this is showing up for me right now is I'm addicted to Instagram. Hi, my name is Alex, and I have an addiction. And literally, it's not about willpower, right? So it's not about, well, if I just tried hard enough, then I wouldn't open my phone. It's not about that. And I had all this morning, all of these rules. Okay, so you're not going to open your phone until your morning routine is over because you want to do all of these things and you want to show up to this call in a certain way. So we're not going to do it. Oh, but what if I just check that one thing on Instagram? What if I? And so I allowed myself to have the thought. And then I didn't pick up the phone, and I literally was like, yes, that's what I did. That was my celebration. And that alone, a tiny celebration, whether it's a clap your hands, a little dance move, a whatever, that is enough to start to rewire your brain towards the habit that you want. Mm-hmm. And all of this negative self-talk, all of the things we look in the mirror, we don't like what we see, your brain is as addicted to that as it would be, or as I am to Instagram, or I also am to sugar, right? So we can choose and be mindful as to what we are attracted to. Yes. And the easiest ways to do that is celebrate all of the things. I mean, give yourself a high five, like right now, give yourself a high five because it matters. And it's simple. It's an easy shift you can do. It's not going to happen once. You're going to probably have to do it like 10,000 times, but it's an easy shift you can do.
Well, and that brings up the reason why so many people are addicted to Instagram is because of that external validation, right? Because we're constantly getting this external validation from other things, looking at other stuff. We're outside of ourselves. And, you see those numbers of like people who like you or don't like you. And, you should
the surprise when you pull it down and then it pulls up and there's new notifications.
Right. Right. And also you're also seeing yourself as not who you really are. You're seeing all the filters, whether you know them or, you're all of the things that we're talking about, guys. Mm-hmm. This is why people like don't want to live in the reality. They want to live in the IG, the Facebook, the Twitter, the, what I mean, if I was addicted to any of them, it would all be TikTok because it's that 15-second hit.
I know. And then you swipe and it's like always a surprise. Like it's totally
woo, woo, woo.
I mean, if you guys have watched Social Dilemma, they talk about the psychology behind it. And it really is, it's just tapping into human psychology. There are real upsides to it, but there's a lot of negative consequences to it. And I think that just being mindful as to what we're consuming and what we're seeing, and just acknowledging that like everything that you're seeing in media on television is manufactured.
Yes.
There's nothing. Reality TV, I hate to break it to y'all, it's not real. They're producers. They tell them what to say. Yeah, it is scripted. It is not real.
I work with all the people. It's scripted. Hi, guys. It's scripted. It's all scripted. It's not real.
You mean Christian Cavallari and whatever his name was? Oh, God. Dang it. My whole life's been a lie.
I know. It's all scripted. So, yeah. So I hope that going through, you kind of know the big hits that you're looking for is, one, when people come in, you ask them questions, right? You get answers from them. So you want to make sure that you get real assessment from them. You get them feedback, right? You give them feedback on what information they're giving to you as you go along the journey, right? You make sure that you only talk in positives to people. You try to make sure that when they talk negatively, you call them out. And then you make sure you re-dialogue it by talking positive to them, right? Let's see, what else we make sure we're talking about? We make sure that we talk about the fact that what they're seeing is, perhaps you call out, is this reality? Is this not reality? This is probably fake.
You know, right? Even there are some accounts, I can't tell you, and I would put in the show notes, but I can't remember, that will show even side by sides of like Instagram influencers and what they've posted. And there are even things that will alter video now. So don't even think that, oh, it's a video, it's got to be real. Like it will make you skinnier and this and that on video.
I use one.
Everything.
I use one. All of my video is touched up because I am a skincare professional.
Even Zoom
I have to look good all the time. So I don't think myself skincare, but my skin, flawless.
Nothing's real. Flawless.
Nothing's real.
I mean, even this light I put up is to make my skin look better. Let me just make sure I don't get
there's a reason why I have all of the light.
Yeah.
Gotta look good. Zoom makes us look better.
It's all fake. We fake. Don't let
it get you. Fake.
Don't let it get you down.
I have a confession. We fake. And then make sure that when you are talking to people that you are as honest about your own feelings as possible. You know, so be straight up. You know, you're not perfect. Be like, I have these feelings too. I've been there, but I want to make sure I share with you what's happening. You know, I think that, as Alex said, like stories, your story, their story, all of those things matter. Right.
Amen.
And then sometimes, and this is the hardest one, sometimes you just have to let people go.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. You're not going to help that person. That person is beyond your reach.
Well, they're just not your client.
Right. Well, they're gone. They're just beyond, I would say they're beyond my reach. They're beyond my reach right now. And bye-bye.
Bye. I just imagine like someone in space just like,
yeah, they're gone. Bye-bye. I'm not going to help you. You're sadly, you're not the person for me right now. So you're not in a place that I can be.
So we would love to know how you are navigating these beauty standards, either with yourself or with your clients. If you too love filters, but also hate them because the world is not real anymore. So come hit us up on social medias where we're like trash talking, but we also love it. The show is at Skinfessional on Instagram. You can find Sybil at Your Skin Fitness Expert, apparently using filters all the damn time. And I am over at Halafamala, and I do not use filters as often. Although there are times I use color filters, not face changing filters. But
oh my God. Let's talk about how I just did a live and the whole thing I streamed with a filter on.
How could you? I didn't even know that was a thing.
Dude, it was so amazing. I was just like, I need a filter because my lighting it's an above light and it just makes me look like so unibrow and it's all gray. It was horrible. The lighting was bad and I couldn't fix it. And I was like,
you need a new light.
That shit.
You need a new light.
I do. My spotlight is really bad. It's just an overhead. So I was doing a beard facial live, and I was just like, this is terrible. Just filter that whole thing. There you go. Thank you, filter.
Thank you, filter. See, they do good things. They do good things.
There you go. But so there we go. Please let us know. We also have a Skinfessional box. It's at 818-473-5277. Go ahead and give us a call. Shout us out. What? And let us know old school style, what you are doing, what problems you might be having, or what you want us to talk about.
Tell us everything. Spill the tea.
We want to know. So, guys, until next week.
Keep your secrets to yourself.
Well, unless you're telling us.
Bye. Okay, bye.